YouTube is preparing. It'll be ready in just a few seconds.
Great. This is a great way to do this. I like it.
Yes. It'll be okay, Miss Sandi. Let me introduce Miss Sandi MacCalla. And Miss MacCalla is the founder of Life Skills Academy and works with a number of students around the East Side and Puget Sound area. And we're really blessed to have her share with us this evening as we prepare a number of you to serve as MCs for our upcoming Opportunity Sundays. So Opportunity Sundays, we expect to begin at the last part of April or beginning of May, and it will focus on interviewing subject matter experts in the areas of an occupation, an organization, or an industry. Our initial focus will be on esport and gaming, since it's such a very high profile industry and opportunity for economic participation in the Puget Sound area. Also, I know a number of you, both adults and youth, play video games. And in this case, we'd like to see you be able to benefit from the opportunities of working with organizations like Nintendo, Microsoft, Xbox, possibly going to college at DigiPen. There are just so many opportunities affiliated, Facebook, and associated with the gaming industry in the Puget Sound region. So we think it'd be a great opportunity as MCs for you to make personal connections. And while in the process of researching, meeting these people face to face, and having a chance to ask your questions. So without further ado, Ms. MacCalla, welcome and thank you very much for sharing with us.
Thank you, Tony. I am delighted to do this, and I'm so excited to see futurepreneurs getting this going. I think it's an extremely exciting area that I'm as close to my heart too as Life Skills Academy, because we really feel that students have not been given enough information to get into the world later in life and have all the skills and all the resources that are available to them, and to make what we call affectionately today adulting easier and more successful. So I want to talk a little bit about, well, let me first of all give you a little bit more information on myself. While I started Life Skills Academy, my background really is more into the social intelligence area. And what I mean by social intelligence, what I really help people to do is to get a lot more clear and more successful of how they arrive in the social arena and how they get included in the social arena, so that they get recognized more and they are making better connections. And then on top of that, how they become memorable, but memorable in a good way. And so that is a lot of what I specialize in, is helping people with those types of soft skills. So I believe that several of you have gotten a copy of some handouts, and those handouts are going to be part of the homework part, but I wanted to just give you a quick look at some of those before we get started, so that to make sure that you know that you've got the information that you need. So I'm going to flip that over to a different point here, if you'll excuse me for a minute. The first one that you have is what's called an introduction. In being an MC, there will be at some point in which you will introduce yourself. And so this is a form that I've used in the work that I've done that helps people kind of clarify and figure out what they want to say about themselves in a clean and crisp way and a very comfortable way. So I wanted to give you some of those tools to start thinking about, and we will certainly work with those in the next session when we start talking more about how we practice, how we introduce ourselves, and how we enunciate and how we present ourselves as an MC. So just want you to know that that's a tool for your use, and we'll look forward to hearing what you're going to tell us about yourself, which will be really probably one of the more interesting parts of all this is who everybody is. Okay, and then the next one that I have in that grouping is the research and moderating tips. Not all of us do the research or learn about companies and industries except through what we hear in the news and so forth. And sometimes there's a lot more information about them that will be really helpful for MCs to have that familiarity about an organization that might be joining in on these panels. So that information is all on the internet. It's highly accessible and it's quite interesting. So I recommend that each one of our MCs, when they are positioned to be on a webcast, that they have an opportunity to research the organizations that will be on the panel. And so that would mean going into the organization's website, going to their annual report. And these are tips of what to look for: their vision, mission statement. A vision is what they have planned down the road, and the mission is how they're going to make those steps to get there. So you want to hear some of that in what their annual report says. You want to look at the size of the organization and who they are, who they are in the marketplace, what ways in which they are playing into their industry, and what ways in which they're expanding and being innovative. And then also develop from that several questions for the panelists that should be open-ended questions to get them to talk and share more of that information that may not be in print, but maybe more of the everyday experience of their industry and their company in particular. And really want to caution everyone to consider not using industry jargon. Whenever that happens, while that might be a connection, communication connection with a panel member, it unfortunately sort of leaves the audience sitting there going, what are they talking about? Feeling left out. So really consider that when you ask questions and when you're forming how you might frame some questions or conversation, be aware of the fact that the audience wants to understand this, and they don't want to feel that they have to have an explanation unless the panel member explains that. And then some moderating tips that are in there just to make sure that when an MC is working with a panel member, that they feel that they have some ability to direct and guide the process. And just some language in there that I think is useful to know is there's not a lot. It should really be your language and your thoughts and your thinking and what you're looking for. But at the same time, there's some language that works better and is respectful and puts a tone into the interview scenario so that everyone is comfortable. And that's the main purpose of it. So you'll want to take a look at those as well on the handout. And then one last one, which is about, oops, wrong one, which is about enunciation. This is kind of a fun exercise piece that I use in a lot of my teaching. And the reason I do this is because we Americans really short circuit our language and our communications quite a bit. We don't pronounce things fully. We don't say things that are always clear, and so we get misunderstood. And this is just anyone who does any public speaking, they do take the time to practice enunciation because they want to make sure that who's listening to them hears them and hears them clearly, and they're not misunderstood, and they're not having the audience feel like, I don't know what they were talking about. So this is just a fun thing to do with, we're going to talk about having a buddy later on. And this is a fun thing to do with each other, to practice these enunciation exercises. Start with them slow, be very clear, and then keep repeating them and increasing your speed, but still being very understandable at the same time. Some of these you might have already seen, some of these you might know, some might be new. So just kind of a fun thing to do that really helps each of us exercise the muscles in our face and in our speaking, so that people really do understand us. So that is some of the homework that you'll see coming up here pretty soon. So getting back to what we're doing, one of the key focuses for this training is to talk about body language, and especially since, guess what? We're not in the same room together. We're all over the place and we are on screen. So there are things that happen in body language that gets read that we don't even realize half the time, that people are reading us and how we're acting and how we're moving and how we're saying our thoughts and saying our communication. So some things and this is something that's not usually taught very often until you get into taking speech classes and what have you. So I wanted to just go over some tips on this, just to get everyone started to thinking about how they'll be coming across on their podcast, webcast, and things that they might want to practice up ahead of time. So first of all, coming into a webcast, you just want to be relaxed. You want to give that air of being relaxed and comfortable. And that will help any panel members feel the same way. And that will help them to relax as well. And for it to be fun for you and for them. So one of the positions, as far as the vertical position is concerned, is to give people the sense of your interest and your communication with them. So if you are moving, if you're sitting up or standing, it doesn't matter. If you are sort of bending a little bit at the waist towards that person, it immediately gives them the impression that, first of all, you're interested. And secondly, it gives them that sense of you're partnering with them in conversation. And that also helps the communication between the two of you. So consider moving forward instead of backwards. Backward is going to give them this impression of something is not right. And you're moving away from them. And as a result, it creates suspicion. It creates caution. And that's not what you want to have happening when you're speaking with somebody on a panel. You want them to feel comfortable enough to open up. So your posture is extremely important. And one of the ways that posture really speaks, particularly on what we're doing on a video, is we see you from the shoulders up pretty much. We're not going to see the whole body. So it's going to be shoulders, it's going to be head, and it's going to be eyes and speaking. So those are the areas we're going to focus on the most as far as body language is concerned, and how you present yourself, how you get comfortable, and how you make others feel comfortable with you. So thinking of the shoulders, I just use the mental picture that I have a rod that is through my shoulders, and my shoulders are moving away from each other. If you want to experience that a little bit, that will keep your posture really solid. And so you want to experience a little bit of that. If you want to do that right now, you kind of get that sense. It'll help you with your breathing. It'll help you with giving a sense of confidence and giving people, again, a good visual of who you are. And you want to breathe fully when you're speaking, doing a full breath. And by being sitting tall, it allows your lungs to have that room to expand and to take in the air that you need. So some people like to breathe into their belly. And I recommend that you actually breathe into your ribs. Let your ribs expand and fill those lungs with air. And then practice to get into later to help give more resonance in your voice is to make sure you're talking from your diaphragm, not to talk from your nose, not to talk from your mouth, not to talk from your throat, but to get down and talking from your diaphragm. So you have stronger resonance, and it gives, again, that sense of confidence and it gives a sense of clarity in what you're doing. Sometimes we all have done this. I know I was just doing it a little earlier with Tony when he was talking, that when you're in agreement with someone that you're listening to or you're engaged with, you might do the head bob, and that's letting them know you're in agreement with them. And that quite often produces more trust, more comfort. So be aware of that aspect. But at the same time, you don't want to be doing this all the time, because it'll be like, what are you doing? What's that about? What are you trying to, it's more than a connection at that point. It's more than an agreement at that point. It's kind of overdoing it. Eye contact, particularly in something like a Zoom virtual meeting, is so important. So you really need to look into the camera, and as if you're talking to that person is on the other side of that little lens, and they want to know that you're looking at them. If they don't see you looking at them, they kind of get distracted too, and they're looking at a whole bunch of other things besides you and listening to you. So eye contact is really pretty important in making connection and establishing trust and establishing a relationship. In our culture, smiling is big. We do a lot of smiling. It is American. In other cultures, it's not as common. Other cultures are more straight-faced. They don't smile until they really get to know somebody. In American, we are friendlier that way, in the American style. So smile is always good when you're communicating with someone. And I do encourage that you feel comfortable to do that, and encourage the other person to feel comfortable as well. Hands are another important part, particularly when we are on video, because again, we're not picking up all the other sensory activities of the other person when we're on video. So hands help a lot, but moderate hand gestures, not a lot of hand gestures. A lot of the gestures should be open, and if you are communicating some information, such as one positive is the open hands, as well as we tend to do thumbs up when we agree with something or we think something's great or everything's a-okay, or what people that are speaking publicly a lot are taught is what's called the modified thumbs up. We don't point when we're talking to people, but instead we use the thumbs up is this, the modified thumbs up is this. So when you're talking to someone, you might be using your hand in directing your conversation to them. So think about that as well. As also, if you're explaining something or you're giving the sort of a countdown that there's 3 things that you want to cover in your question, you use your fingers for that, because it'll help that conversation even more. It's a visual as well as the vocal information. If you want to just have a little conversation with them, or if it's a really big deal, then you want to use your hands in relationship to that as well. It just helps the communication take place. And if something's really important to you, you're passionate about it, having your hand somewhere in the upper chest area will also communicate that stronger than you're just saying, I really love that. Your words won't carry as much as your hand will then will also confirm that. So that is really the bulk of the body language to be aware of, practice, try on, see how it fits for you, make it yours, and make yourself comfortable with it, because it will make a big difference as to how you're communicating with other people and how they're responding to you. So I think our next section is to talk a little bit about buddying up. And I'm not sure if anybody has mentioned that as yet, but we're looking for the MCs to have buddies, two people to work together, to be practice buddies, to be buddies to do the enunciation exercises, or helping to speak or test out questions that they might want to pose, and to have somebody else there as a sounding board. So and plus the fact that what we want to do is to, if for some reason someone is set up for a particular opportunity Sunday, and something happens and they can't make it, then we have somebody, their buddy, hopefully, ready to step in as well. So it's a good way to have the continuity that keeps these as vibrant and very active and engaging events. So on the, we already went over the pieces for the homework, and we'll be looking for people to buddy up on that, as well as doing the practice. And the buddy work, I suggest that you each select out, after you've done your research on the organization that you've been apprised of that will be on an event, you want to come up with 2 to 3 written questions. You want it written out so that you can really practice it, memorize it, get very comfortable with it, and practice it until it really feels natural. You don't have to look at the paper anymore. You know exactly what the question is that you're asking, and the tone and the way you want to present it. You want to pay attention to your enunciation and tone and breathing, but a buddy can tell you whether or not you're being successful with that, or if there might be some things that would be better that you might come across in a stronger way or in a more noticeable way. The feedback too from a buddy, we do want to give each other feedback as to how we're perceiving the other person. We really want to be committed to our buddies and committed to their success. So when you are buddied up with someone, it is for the intention that you're going to be their hero on the sidelines, cheering them on and giving them the feedback to improve what they're doing and making them stronger, as well as to compliment. And I always suggest that when you do feedback, that the first thing that you mention is the area for improvement. You want to talk about that first. Everyone expects what they call the bad news. It's not really bad news. It's a way to improve and to somebody else cares about what you're saying and how you're saying it, and you're being successful. That presenting that first sort of gets that out of the way and work on the parts that may need improvement. And then talk about the things that are really working well, and encouraging the other person to see themselves in a positive light. Most of us do not tend to have a positive feedback system to ourselves. So it's helpful when somebody that you're working with, that you know and that you feel comfortable with, can do that feedback with you. It just is energizing, and it helps each one of us to focus and really be clear about our success in what we're attempting to do. So the homework for the next session, which will be next Thursday, same time, same station, as they say, we will be doing the practice and looking at the questions that people are preparing and getting a chance to really get hands-on with this and feel comfortable with it with each other. So the research was in the takeaway of the research and the moderating tips. Practice your introduction and your enunciation, practice those different statements for enunciation, and then role play. Practice until it feels natural to you, whatever it is that you are designing for these Emcee interviews. And again, be a good buddy, be a really good buddy to each other. It will help everyone in the long run to know that you've got someone in your camp and knows you well enough and knows how to support you and knows what you're attempting to do. So that is a lot of what I have for today, and I'm ready for any questions that anyone might have that I can be of help on. So are we getting any questions at this point in the chat?
We do not have any in the chat.
Okay, that's fine.
So
Just
what I'll ask is, pretty much everyone is I can see on camera. Would you like to raise your hand if you have a question or comment, and I'll unmute you.
Okay.
You're unmuted.
Yes, I have a question. Can we go back and see those questions, or are you going to email them to us?
I'm going
the
to
research?
email, I'm going to email them to you first thing tomorrow morning.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Yes, there was another one, Maisie.
Maisie?
Mm-hmm.
That was the same question that I had. So
Okay. Yes. Happy to have you have all the information and all the tools that that you can use, and even a copy of this slide presentation if it helps you as well. So more than happy to do that too.
Hi, Miss Sandy.
Hi, Samira.
Yes, so a quick question for you regarding the positive feedback.
Mhm.
So we had our first like, because our church is doing this thing where we're submitting videos for Easter. And
Oh.
so we actually received our first positive, I would call it, feedback, because I guess one of the things is, can you elaborate more on when you're smiling when you're talking? Because I think that was one of the things that came across as kind of it didn't go over so healthy, because it's really important, right? For you to smile through your presentation, because it gives a different energy, right?
That's true. That's true. You don't have to do it the whole time. However, I think mainly what you do is that as you are starting the contact and the communication, that you do have a smile on your face, and that you do smile at the other person as if to say, you know, we're in this together. And that's really what you want to visually convey to them by smiling, that we're all on the same planet together. So
Right.
we're in this together. We don't have another planet to go skip to if we don't like this one. So at any rate, so yeah, so you don't have to smile the whole time, because it may, at that point, people may say, are you laughing at me? There are other questions that come up in the other person's mind. That is your smile real? Are you being sincere about you care about me as a person? So there's a lot of that comes up if we smile too much. But if we smile enough to be friendly and in the beginning of the conversation, and if you're asking a serious question, you don't want to smile. And the other, I think, you don't want to do is to imply that you're being, what's a good word for it? That you're treating someone in a way that is not serious, first of all, as well as you're not, that you're somehow playing up to them. And sometimes smiling can look like that. If I smile at you, you're going to like me. Well, that's not always the case, right? And so,
Yeah.
so that isn't really what you want to communicate. When you smile, it's just basically to say, relax, we're going to have a conversation, and I'm glad to meet you and to hear what you have to say. So
Okay, so you got to find a balance with it.
you have, exactly, that's a great word for it. Balance is a great word.
Okay, all right, thank you for sharing that.
Oh, absolutely. It was a great question.
Mhm.
Any other questions? Cabal and Parrish, I don't have visual contact with you. So if you have any questions,
Mr. Benjamin, is it Benjamin?
yes.
He's trying to speak.
Yeah, close enough, close enough. Hi, Sandy, great job there. Yeah, just as a experienced public speaker myself too, just a tip for people is obviously the eye contact, which you hit on pretty great, but it's also important to know who you're looking at, and create almost dialogue with that person with your eye contact.
Exactly.
Right? So it's funny when you're in the audience and you're looking at a speaker and you see that they make basically a connection with somebody in the audience. And that actually attracts that person to try to understand what they're looking at. If if you have a 10-minute conversation with an audience and you look at, 10 different people, you're going to attract a lot more eyes, a lot more attention. They're going to pay attention to what you're saying. And when you make an eye contact with a certain person, they're going to think that you're talking to them specifically. So, you know, the eye contact is great, but understanding what kind of eye contact, how you're relating that to each thing you're saying is important. So not just looking at, behind people's heads, you're focusing, you're looking at their eyes, you're seeing their soul, basically. You're moving on to the next person as you're talking to them. That helps everybody engage to what you're saying. Inflection in your voice is important, obviously. So a lot of these little things that Sandi has mentioned all adds up to the group being engaged to what you're saying. So it's all important. But anyway, just wanted to say thanks, and I'll turn it back to Bree.
Well, I think that's all really good. And I'll add one little piece to it. If you also, as we probably will have with the panelists, will probably have their name, and you using their name also will be very important as well. So if you know their name and you use that name, then they will also know that you are connecting with them, and that will make a huge difference in the conversation. So did we have any more?
Okay, while you're thinking, I'm sorry, go ahead. Okay, while you're thinking of questions, what I will need is everyone that's on the call, I may not have your email address, so please, the invitation that you received from me in email, please reply to that email and give me your, everyone, please send me your emails if you participated in this call to Tony B, TonyB at fpus.org. So F as in Frank, P as in Paul, U as in United, S as in States.org. Tony B at fpus.org. I know most of you and most of your emails, but I just want to make sure that I have your email so that I can immediately send you a copy of the presentation and also the homework assignments. You will also receive a Flipgrid code. So when you practice your tongue twisters for enunciation, what we'll want you to do is create a video of your practice session on Flipgrid. And when you submit that practice video, then Miss Sandi and myself will be able to look at your videos and your practice and be able to give you feedback in our next session. So you're going to receive the documents that go along with this session. You'll receive your homework, and you also receive a Flipgrid code. Raise your hand. How many of you have worked with Flipgrid before? Can I see a show of hands? Nobody has used Flipgrid? Okay, Samira has? Okay, great. So we'll use Flipgrid. Okay, Bree, great. So we'll use Flipgrid for the practice sessions. And so you'll do your Flipgrids and you'll submit those so that we have a chance to give you feedback. So that's what you'll receive. I'll be getting that out to you first thing tomorrow morning. Any other questions or comments? Great. Well, Miss Sandi, thank you so much. This is an excellent start for our opportunity in preparation for our Opportunity Sundays. It's going to be a very important part of Futurepreneurs, one of our key offerings as we launch Futurepreneurs. So, so pleased that we have one of the best, if not the best, in mentoring and tutoring us on this portion of our program. Miss Sandi, you have any additional comments?
I just, as I said earlier, I am so excited to see this happening and so excited to see everyone getting involved and getting an opportunity to try this out if you're interested in it. I think it'll be very fun. And I think it'll be just a new journey for everyone to try and get in on this. I really support it, and I'm here in any way I can be of help.
Great. Okay, so same time, same place next Thursday for this group. Really pleased we have a great starting group. I'm also encouraged that we'll have a good panel for our first session on the 26th. That's when we're scheduled, for the 26th. And Mr. Leonard, did you have another thought or comment?